welcome to Whitehall Historic House. This building has stood here at the heart of Cheam village for over 500 years. Isn't that amazing? Can you imagine how different the world was when this house was first built? It was built in a time before the internet, before mobile phones, before computers, before TV, before aeroplanes, before cars, before trains, before bicycles, before clocks, before electricity. Can you imagine how much change this house has seen? When this house was built, Cheam was a tiny village surrounded by fields. It had grown from being an Iron Age settlement with just a few small houses to a busy farming community where hundreds of people lived and kept pigs, cows and sheep and grew all sorts of different crops on their land. By the 1500s, it had a busy market and a thriving pottery industry too. In 1537, Henry VIII began construction on an opulent new palace called Nonsuch Palace. It was located in what is now Nonsuch Park. The construction of the palace brought craftspeople and builders from all over Europe, and Cheam village began to grow and grow. Even after Nonsuch Palace was demolished, Cheam village was still a busy farming village. It had its own pubs, its own brewery, and its own church. Today, we're going to be asking the question, what was Cheam like in the past, and how do we know? We will be thinking about how we can find out what a place was like in the past, looking at photographs of Cheam in the past, and spotting things that are the same and things that are different. But first of all, let me ask you a question. What would you do if you wanted to know what a place was like a couple of years before you were born? Who would you ask? That's right. You would probably ask your parents or carers. Who would you ask if you wanted to know what a place was like a couple of years before your parents were born? That's right. You would probably ask your grandparents or older friends or relatives. Who would you ask if you wanted to know what a place was like 120 years ago? That is a tricky one. Why is that a tricky problem? Well done. It's difficult because anybody who was alive 120 years ago is no longer with us, so they can't tell us what it was like here. So how can we find out what Cheam was like 120 years ago? Your teacher's going to pause the video now and you can tell the person next to you, how do we know now what Cheam was like 120 years ago? Let's see what you think. I bet you had lots of great ideas. Let's see whether you agree with me. Here is one way that we can find out what Cheam was like in the past. Can you tell what these are? That's right, they're maps. These are old maps of Cheam. What information can we get from them? Can you see? We have lots of old maps in our archives. They show us things like where roads used to be, what the land was used for, what buildings there were, and even sometimes who owned the land. This is another way we can tell what Cheam was like in the past. Do you know what it is? That's right, it's a newspaper. The articles and the adverts in these newspapers can give us lots of information about how Cheam used to be. These newspapers are made up of things like interviews, adverts, news stories, and opinions. And all of these things can give us really valuable information about what Cheam was like in the past. Here is another way we can tell what Cheam used to look like in the past. Can you tell what these are? That's right, they're paintings and sketches of Cheam. They give us an idea of what Cheam might have looked like, but we do need to be careful. We can't trust them completely. Can you think why? That's right. When an artist is creating something like a painting or a drawing, they might often add or remove things that don't fit with the image that they're trying to create. An artist's job is to make something beautiful or meaningful, not create something that is truthful. We might be able to tell what a place is like from things like letters, diaries, and journals too. But none of these is the best way to find out what a place was like in the past. Can you think of what the best way might be? That's right, photographs. Photographs are excellent ways to tell what a place was like in the past. Photographs show what a place was really like because they capture a place and the people who were there at the time. Hang on, there is a little bit of a problem with photographs and using them to tell us what life was like in the past. The camera wasn't invented until the early 1800s, and it was around the 1880s by the time that your average person could buy one and use them to photograph the area where they lived. This means that we don't have any photographs of Cheam from before the 1880s. Here is a photograph of Cheam High Street from the year 1910. That was over 110 years ago. It's changed a bit, hasn't it? Now we're going to be history detectives. Here's my magnifying glass. Have you got a magnifying glass? It's okay if you don't. Maybe you could just imagine you do. We're going to be looking really carefully at some photographs to see what they can tell us about what Cheam was like in the past. Firstly, we're going to be thinking, what things in the photograph are the same as what we might see today? Let's look at it together. In this photograph, the things that are the same as what you might see today are shops. You can see the shops on the left, trees lining the street, and street lamps. These are all things today that you might see on Cheam High Street. Can you think of any others that we haven't mentioned? Now let's have a think about the things that are different. What things in the photograph are different to what we might see today? There's quite a lot to choose from. Let's have a look at some together. Firstly, look at the clothes they're wearing. The men in the photograph are wearing hats, jackets, shirts, and ties. They're dressed much more formally than we might do today. Secondly, can you see how narrow the pavements are? There are no cars racing by, so the pavements didn't need to be very deep. And number 3, the road is not tarmacked. This means that when it was wet, it would be very muddy. Now it's time for you to take part in your first activity this lesson. Your teacher has a collection of photographs that show Cheam in the past. Your job is this. You're going to look at the collection of photographs and you're going to answer 2 questions about them. The first question is, what in the photographs is the same as you might see in Cheam Village or the town where you live today? The next question is, what in the photographs is different to what you might see in Cheam Village or in your town today? Good luck, history detectives. Excellent! Well done, history detectives. I wonder what you noticed. What did you notice about the clothes? What did you notice about the transport? What did you notice about the shops? Well done! I bet you noticed lots of similarities and differences between Cheam in the past and your town today. Most of these photographs were taken around the year 1900, when very few people would have had cameras. The cameras that they would have had looked a bit like this, so they were very bulky and expensive. Around the year 1900, Cheam was just a tiny village of a few hundred people. Lots of the people that lived around Cheam would have worked on farms or at the big houses at Nonsuch Park or at Cheam House. Can you think what jobs they might have done there? From a document called the Census, which lists the people who lived in each house at the time, we know that some of the people that lived in Cheam worked as bakers, gardeners, workers on the railway, teachers, clergymen at St Dunstan's Church, tailors and dressmakers, dairymen who looked after cows and sold their milk. Several of the people who lived in Cheam village worked at the brewery. You could have found the brewery at Cheam's Crossroads. Do you know what a brewery is? Tell the person next to you what you think. That's right. A brewery is a place where beer is made. In the past, breweries were small and local, and the brewery in Cheam was a very important place for the local community. Not only did it make beer for the many pubs in the town, but it was also where lots of people worked. Here's a photograph of some of the people that worked at the brewery in the year 1876. The man at the back was named George Gates, and he was known as the Cheam Giant. Can you think why? And now it's time for your next task. You're going to be needing those detective skills again because you're going to be looking very carefully. You're going to be completing a scavenger hunt. You're going to be given a sheet that looks like this. Your teacher's going to give you some photographs of Cheam in the past, and they're going to place them all around the room. Your job is going to be to look really carefully at one photograph and see if you can find any of these people, places or objects. When you find one, you can give yourself a little pat on the back and put a big tick in the box next to it. Then you can move on to another picture and continue the search. Can you find them all? I wonder how many objects and people from the past you can find. Well done everyone! I wonder how many items on the scavenger hunt you found. Was there anything that you couldn't find? Why do you think that was? Which of the people or things on your sheet were not in any of the photographs? That's right, it was the car. The photographs that you've been looking at today are all from before the year 1923. In 1923, the brewery, which was on the corner, had stopped making beer, and lots of the buildings around the centre of Cheam were very old. The road was also very narrow. Did you notice that? It was far too narrow for cars to drive down. The decision was made to demolish the brewery and lots of the very old buildings, and to make the road much wider so that cars could drive down it. The car from your scavenger hunt was actually from this photograph. Can you see it? Doesn't the village look very different? Can you believe this is the same road only a few years apart? So, let's recap what we've talked about today. We have thought about how we can find out what a place was like in the past. We've looked at old photographs of Cheam, and we've spotted things that are the same and things that were different. Thank you so much for joining us here at Whitehall today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about what Cheam was like in the past. Whitehall is open to the public on weekends and during the school holidays, and we've always got lots of fun activities going on. So why don't you tell your parents about us and come along one day? Thank you so much. Bye.